Hello and welcome to Salute Your Sports. I'm Kamen Enchev with Tom Castleman. What a sports week we have. Right now, Tom, I'm currently watching this Nadal-Djokovic tennis match. Might have some big money on Nadal looking to cash in. So if at any point you see me looking on the left on the TV, I don't normally do that, but this tennis match is this good. But we are here to talk about the NBA Finals, of course. It's going to be fun. Warriors and Celtics. Tom, which team has the better duo? Who has the better coach? Who's going to win the finals and why? Just some of the many topics we'll answer on this program. I know who I'm picking. You know who I'm picking. But all of a sudden, maybe a little bit of a question mark as to who Tom will take in the finals. I certainly can't wait, as Bart Scott would say, to find out.
Absolutely. We're going to touch on just about every aspect of this matchup as it's going to be an intriguing one. We've got the Warriors appearing in their sixth finals in the past 8 years, which is incredible when you consider that they entirely missed the playoffs for those 2 years, that they didn't make the finals. So with a healthy Klay Thompson back, with a rejuvenated Steph Curry, with some found value, with guys like Jordan Poole, on the roster. That's how the Warriors find themselves here in the NBA Finals. Boston Celtics basically riding on Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown as their two stars, but finding some value in their role players. Al Horford, who went on a sojourn starting with Boston, traveling to Philly, Oklahoma City, then returning as kind of just like salary filler for the Boston Celtics, playing a big, big role for that team in the playoffs. So definitely going to be touching on a lot of different guys that can have an impact on this series, as we're going to have 10 guys on the court. Rotations are going to be short to like 7, 8 guys at most. So we'll probably get in depth on a lot of the names that you're going to be hearing on the ESPN/ABC call coming over the next couple of games. But before we get into the matchup itself between these two teams, what has impressed you most about their journeys to the playoffs so far, Common? So we've got the Warriors, who were the 3 seed in the Western Conference. Celtics were the 2nd seed in the Eastern Conference. Just kind of like starting off with a bit of a recap of how we even got to this point with the series starting from round 1 all the way to now.
Yeah, the big question is who has been more impressive between these two teams. And for me, I mean, Boston went on a 7-game series to beat the Chris Middleton-less Bucks, then went on to beat the Heat in 7, who had some injuries themselves. I'll say Boston also had injuries. So a lot of injuries in those series, but they also swept the Nets in the first round, which seems like ages ago. But they only outscored them by 18 total points in those 4 games. So Boston had to struggle through most of its series. I know their point differential looks better than it is because they had some massive blowout wins, but they did come back from down 3-2 against the Bucks. They did win a game 7 on the road in Miami, which is really impressive. But I think right now the Warriors are the more impressive team and the team that's quite frankly playing better basketball at the moment. Golden State is the answer. They beat the Grizzlies in 6 games. They beat the Nuggets in 5, the Mavs in 5. They have 4 playoff losses. Boston has 6. Golden State's won at least a road game in every series, and they've won every home game. So there really was never a question mark as to whether Golden State would win any of its series. They won game 1 in all of them. They never trailed at any point in any series. Really felt like they had complete control in every series they played. I can't say the same for the Celtics. Maybe this isn't a fair thing to say, but I think you could probably agree. Had Chris Middleton played, they probably would be out in the second round against Milwaukee. So the Warriors are more impressive. I love what they've gotten from Steph Curry in the playoffs, but they've also reintegrated Klay Thompson, Jordan Poole, and Andrew Wiggins. The question mark was like, what's going to happen with Poole, Curry, and Klay? Can the 3 of them play together? The answer has been a resounding yes in the playoffs. Draymond Green is back. What happens when Draymond, Klay, and Steph play together? Lots of dubs for the Dubs. So Steph averaging about 26 a game in the playoffs. Klay about 20. Jordan Poole about 18. Wiggins at 16. 4 rock solid leading scorers. Golden State playing the best ball in the NBA at the moment. I'm gonna check my light real quickly, but Tom, what do you think? Who's been more impressive so far in the playoffs between these two teams?
Yeah, I'm going to say Boston Celtics have been impressive, and I'm going to take the question in a little bit different of a manner than you did, Common, where Golden State has been clearly the better team than, say, Denver. They've been clearly the better team than Memphis, clearly the better team than Dallas, whereas Boston, I find the run to be impressive because this is kind of the culmination of a rebuilding effort that Danny Ainge started a while back in terms of trading that first overall pick, trading down from what was ending up going to be Markelle Fultz, I believe that was. He went to the 76ers, to picking up Jason Tatum, getting Jaylen Brown in the draft before. And I think it's been an impressive run where you have this young team with a couple of superstars, or at least one superstar, and then a really, really good star in Jaylen Brown, if you want to split hairs on designation for that. I think the run's been really impressive because they went up against a Nets team that, in spite of having no proof, a lot of people thought, ourselves included, that the Nets were going to be representing the East in the NBA Finals, and finding a way to beat and contain and slow down Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving is no small task. Then you go and you face the Milwaukee Bucks, who, even without Chris Middleton, Giannis is arguably the best player in the NBA going right now.
He is.
I mean, you could do some recency bias if you want to talk Luka. There's always legacy.
Giannis plays better D than Luka. Giannis is the best player in the game.
So
I agree.
You got the best player in the game. You got my favorite player in the game, Drew Holiday. You go and you beat the Bucks in that series, and then you face a really, really tough, maybe playing better than the whole plays better than the sum of its parts in Miami, where you win a pivotal Game 5, you win a pivotal Game 7. I think that the Celtics run has not been as dominant, perhaps, as the Warriors have, but I think it's more impressive in a different kind of manner because this is a lot of first. Even somebody like Al Horford on the Celtics at the age of, I think he's 35, 36, this is his first appearance on the big stage. So there's not really a whole lot of NBA Finals experience on this Boston team for me, which makes it why it's really impressive that they've gotten to this point, because so often we've talked about you have to have been there. Well, there's a first time for everything, and Boston's breaking through. So that's why I think Boston has had the most impressive run, or the more impressive run of the two so far. So a little bit of a different grade that I'm putting on it in terms of style, but definitely both teams really, really impressive in how they got here so far. So a big part in how these teams have gotten here, of course, we can talk about X factors and role players and everything, but this is the NBA. This isn't the Conference of Champions, as Bill Walton would say. This is the League of Superstars. This is where stars will carry you as far as you're going. Yes, it's a team game, but the best player on the floor can impact offense and defense more so than any other sport that we've got, which makes this really, really interesting. So the duo, we've seen them grow from kind of like, not so heralded mid-lottery picks, late lottery picks, Steph Curry, Klay Thompson. They've been there. They've been here. They've done this. That. And then we've got Tatum and Brown for the Celtics. So who's the better duo? And we'll say right now, because obviously longer term, Boston has the better duo, I think. But right now, as of this moment, who are you taking?
Oh man, this is a brutal question. I know we have a lot of stuff we'll get through on this program. By the way, Nadal wins set 3, baby. 2-1 Rafa. Cash it in, baby. One more, Rafa. But back to basketball. This is a great question. I think obviously going forward, Boston's guys are younger, as you said. Obviously, historically, Curry and Klay have achieved more. At this current moment, it is so close. So statistically in the playoffs, Tatum and Brown have put up a little bit better numbers. But they're playing more minutes. They're taking a little bit more shots. We'll get into this throughout the program, but I think that Tatum and Brown have to do more for their squads than Curry and Klay have to do for the Warriors. I think Curry and Klay have better supporting cast around them with, Green, Wiggins, Jordan Poole, etc. So how much I love statistics. Statistically, right now, Tatum and Brown are playing a little bit better But I'm going to give the slightest of slight edges to Steph and Clay. And a lot of this is simply because I think Steph is better than Tatum. Brown and Clay, flip a coin. But I think Steph is one of those guys that does more than the statistics. I love stats, Tom, but sometimes in sports, there's guys like Curry, like an Andres Iniesta for Barcelona, a guy that's way better than his stats. Even Luka Modric for Real Madrid. Curry is just that for the Warriors. That freedom, that style that they play, they pass it around, they chuck up threes, they run around the court. They're having a good time, and they're exhausting you while doing it. Steph, you can't account for statistics that tires out defenders that are chasing Steph Clay around screens. Tatum and Brown, while more physical, that's where they get the edge, are more traditional ISO players. I think that puts a lot more stress on the defense when Steph and Clay can literally catch and shoot. They have the most catch and shoot threes since 2014-2015 season, the two of them, despite injuries. They can run around, they can catch and shoot. They're a team that passes the ball around a ton. It makes it harder to guard them than Boston, which is, not necessarily only ISO. They do pass like every team does. If you're at this stage, you can't win with just ISO ball, but I'd argue that Tatum and Brown rely a little bit more on ISO, a little bit more on transition. And I think Stephen Curry causes a headache for the defense, and he really opens up the game for the rest of the Warriors squad. So you can't just measure this by statistics. I kind of might have said this already, and I'll say this several times throughout the show. I'll have a lot of Al Horford later in the show as well, but 0 NBA Finals experience for Tatum, Brown, and the whole roster. Boston has 0 playoff games played. The Warriors have, I believe, 123 on the roster. Steph and Clay played in 5 finals. They've won 3 of them. They're more proven at this stage. And while I think probably next year, maybe he was probably better this year already in the regular season, Tatum might be better going forward. But in this setting, in this series, I think Curry's the best star. And that is why I like the duo better, because I think Tatum and Clay are pretty close to me. I think Steph gets the edge over Jason Tatum for the biggest star, and hence the best duo.
Yeah, I think I might be leaning. I got a guy. I just have to go with the guys that have done this before in terms of Steph and Clay, especially because their games, their styles of play, their strong suits aren't quite as perishable as, say, pure athleticism, jumping ability, speed. Shooting is something that we've seen a lot of guys be really, really good at as their careers progress, or sometimes get even better as they progress, simply because they have to incorporate more of that into their game. I think part of what's kind of baked into the Steph and Clay versus Tatum and Brown debate is that if we were going to play like a 2-on-2 matchup type of thing, I'm going with Tatum and Brown. But the fact that we're playing within a team game, a team system, Golden State is a Steve Kerr has had this offensive system in place that allows these guys to move without the ball and to get lots of good open looks. So I think that's going to be part of what makes them kind of like the better duo in the series, is because they know exactly what they have to do on offense. And this is purely aesthetic because it doesn't necessarily seem like it's more effort. But it seems like it's just easier when they're shooting the ball and shooting the ball well. It looks almost effortless, whereas watching that Miami Heat series, and of course part of this could be the fact that it's the Miami Heat, everything looked really, really tough for Brown and Tatum, where, yeah, they're able to get to the basket, but a lot of shots are contested. A lot of shots are, putbacks that they're able to kind of just like chase down. So I'll take Steph and Clay as well. I'm right with you, though, where it's like, really close.
It's close.
It's really close, as it should be for the NBA Finals, quite frankly.
And I think you put it really well together. While I can't say with confidence who would win, but if I was leaning on a 2v2 situation, I might give a slight edge to Tatum and Brown. But in a 5v5, Steph and Clay, where you can get the screeners, where you can get a good passer. And part of that is, like, all due respect to Marcus Smart, but, he's not as good of a point guard as Draymond Green. I say Draymond Green as a point guard because that's what him and Steph are. He's the primary passer that's going to give Steph and Clay the ball. Jordan Poole is also an excellent passer.
Mhm.
So within their systems, they're a better duo as well. This is 5-on-5 after all, not 2v2. So yeah, it's a great two great duos though, and it's sort of like I know last year, obviously Middleton's a good player, and it showed with them losing, but he's not necessarily a first tier, even second tier level star. We were getting ready to say like the super teams and the duos are gone, and here you go. You have two of the best duos, if not the two best duos in the NBA meeting in the finals.
Absolutely, and kind of like broadening the scope now on these backcourts. I mean, we're going to throw in. We've already talked Steph and Clay. We've got Jordan Poole. We'll say we'll count small forwards as perimeter. We've got Jordan Poole, Andrew Wiggins. Let's see, Otto Porter Jr. And that's pretty much rounding out what Golden State has as far as their depth goes on the perimeter. On Boston's side, you've got Marcus Smart, Derek White. Peyton Pritchard hasn't really been playing as much, so a bit of a shorter rotation if we're going to go, Smart and Derek White as part of the backcourt. Overall, who are you trusting more? Who are you liking more as far as perimeter play for the series?
Yeah, I think this is a pretty even matchup as the duos are, and I do consider the small forward as a perimeter guy. So I mean, I consider Tatum and Brown as perimeter players like Steph and Clay. I'll be honest, I actually consider Draymond as a perimeter player. I know he's technically a power forward, but he gets a lot of assists. He is like the leading assist guy. Him and Steph typically pretty close there on the assists. I think I give a very slight edge to the Warriors because I think they also have more depth. You kind of just said it. Like Peyton Pritchard plays a little, but not much. Warriors, I think Jordan Poole. See, Jordan Poole and Marcus Smart is a great debate because I think Jordan Poole offers more offensively, but Marcus Smart is obviously the defensive player of the year. So that in itself is a great debate. Who do you like more, Jordan Poole or Marcus Smart? I can say this though, regardless of whether he deserved to make it or not, K-pop sensations helping him out or not. I do think Andrew Wiggins is a better player than anyone else Boston has off the bench there or as a starter. I think White's been coming off the bench more, but he gets some starting minutes. I do think they also have better depth on the perimeter. I know you mentioned Otto Porter Jr., who again is more of a small forward. But if they get Andre Iguodala back, if they get Gary Payton back, which they might, even Moses Moody coming off the bench was good in that last series. Kuminga, I know he's again more of a small power, but he plays on the perimeter as well. I think Golden State simply has more depth. You look at them, the top two, top three, about the same. But when we get to the fourth best perimeter player, the fifth best perimeter player, the sixth best perimeter player, Golden State, while maybe not a major edge, I think definitely has the edge there as far as depth on the perimeter.
Absolutely. I'm kind of, depth goes to Golden State. But in talking about a system, I actually kind of like Boston as a whole a little bit better because of the defense that they provide. I think that Marcus Smart is going to be used, and we don't often use this term in basketball, he's going to be used as a weapon on defense. It's going to be really interesting to see, how Ime Udoka decides to deploy the NBA's Defensive Player of the Year this season. If it's going to be, you're on Steph Curry, and I want you to tell me what deodorant he is wearing every time we come back to the huddle. It's going to be interesting. Is he on that? Is he going to be more going after whoever the hot hand is on Golden State in terms of, we've seen Curry as he's gotten a little bit older. There are some nights where the shots simply aren't falling. He's not as automatic beyond three as much as we come to, expect with that term. Are there going to be nights where it's like, hey, Clay is heating up or Poole is like really getting to the hoop? So Marcus, you're going to go and you're going to stop that person. And then just Derek White, the role that he has found as a backup point guard, combo guard coming off the bench, and the role that he's been playing, I agree there's a lot more scoring. But on Golden State's side, I like the overall play that Boston's putting together, though. So in terms of, again, the caveat is always of slight edges. I'm giving a slight edge to the play for Boston on the perimeter on that one.
Yeah, and real quickly to just counteract that, I'll say a couple quick things. as much as defense matters, great offense often beats great defense. And Stephen Curry is a generational talent. If his shots are falling, he can get them off the dribble. He can get them catch and shoot. Marcus Smart won't have much to do with him. I know Boston's taken its defense to the next level, but I might get into this in locks of the week with Stephen Curry's over totals. But let's just say he's been going over 40, over 30 consistently against the Celtics the last couple years. So just one thing to keep in mind as far as that goes. And again, Draymond, I'm not sure who he's going to be guarding, but I'm willing to bet that Draymond's going to be on Tatum and Brown a decent amount this series. And pretty much anything Marcus Smart offers on defense, Draymond offers about the same. I know he's a former defensive player. I think he won Defensive Player of the Year. If not, he's definitely been a finalist, Draymond Green. So I'd argue that he provides a lot of that perimeter defense. So it's very close, but I'll go the other way. Slight edge the Warriors.
Absolutely. So we've talked about perimeter play, something that we don't often associate with Golden State, and that's probably going to kind of influence where we're going on this one, is post play. So we'll throw Draymond Green, as we talked about, kind of that like hybrid player who can play just about anywhere 1 through 5 on a given lineup. Kevon Looney obviously playing a huge role with James Wiseman, former second overall pick, out with injury. On Boston, the big contributors are, of course, as we've talked about a couple times already, Al Horford, Robert Williams III, who was kind of like right there with Marcus Smart in terms of Defensive Player of the Year until he got hurt with a knee injury. Of course, that injury is still going to be a bit of a storyline with him and how much he is able to contribute. And then Grant Williams, we've seen him contributing, both offensively with a massive explosion. I believe that was against the Bucks, like Game 6, something like that, where he put in like 6 3-point shots, even though he's not that great of a 3-point shooter, providing just like a big mobile body for Boston. There's some role players in there as well. Daniel Tice for Boston as well, occasionally contributing minutes. So are you going with Golden State's big men or Boston's big men?
I'm a fan of Grant Williams, by the way, because I covered him in college against Mizzou, former Tennessee guy. I actually got to cover 2 of his college games against Mizzou. Needless to say, I think he did pretty good. But nonetheless, I think this is where we'll probably agree. I know Looney's played pretty good in the playoffs. Bjelica is a talented big man. Draymond, as you mentioned, you might consider him a big man as well. He's kind of a hybrid, but I think that Boston has a little bit of an edge here. I don't think it's an enormous edge, but I think if we're considering everything, in all honesty, I count Draymond as a perimeter guy. So I will preface this question. This is why I think the Warriors perimeter players get the edge and the Celtics big guys get the edge, because I group Draymond more on the perimeter side. But I think Al Horford is the best big man in this series. He's a multi-time All-Star in his prime, and he's not quite in his prime, but he's turned the clock back quite a few times in these playoffs where he doesn't look too far off his prime. And in his prime, he was an All-Star. Al Horford is playing great basketball right now. He's a guy that could give the Warriors some trouble because you don't want Draymond guarding him. Draymond is going to be guarding Tatum and Brown. So, I mean, if not Draymond, who's going to stop Horford? And Robert Williams III is a great defensive player, great rebounder. He's a big guy. He can get some shot blocks. I mean, if Golden State is going to lose this series, which, I don't think they are, but the way Boston can win this series is if Al Horford becomes, a 20-point per game guy instead of, 12, 13, 14, whatever it may be. So I think that Boston has the edge on the perimeter because of Al Horford and Robert Williams. The Warriors don't have anyone like that on their current roster. James Wiseman might be coming soon. Think about that. They did all that this year without the former lottery pick. So at the moment, though, Boston's got the big guy edge.
Yeah, I think Boston has a significant big guy edge. And this is going to be something where it'll be kind of interesting to see that this is a place where Golden State hasn't faced a challenge so far in the playoffs. I mean, they had Nikola Jokic in that series against Denver, but Denver, of course, doesn't have the quality of perimeter players that Boston has. Dallas, of course, no real post presence to speak of. And even when you look at Memphis, Jaren Jackson, more of a stretch four type of player. Steven Adams is a big bruiser.
He shoots too much.
But, in terms of, having like a dominant down low post player, Golden State hasn't really had to face any of that, or at least like a consistent threat of that throughout the playoffs. And, that's what they're going to have to face. So with Robert Williams, who on the defensive end is a really good roamer, really good help defender. And then on the offensive end for him, it's all about offensive rebounds and putbacks. I think that's going to be something that's going to be a pretty consistent thing because we're going to see a lot of longer range shots, which means more of those extra opportunities. Al Horford, of course, his game has kind of grown and morphed and changed over the years where, we remember him from his days at Florida and his early days in the NBA where he was a good post scorer and kind of like a stretch to like long two, shooter as far as being a big man goes. Now he's obviously much more perimeter oriented because there's more value in him taking a couple steps back and aiming for a 3-point shot. I would not be surprised at all to see some traditional low post touches for Al Horford. It's not necessarily the most efficient way to run an entire offense, but that's definitely going to be a way where I think Boston is going to kind of probe and test what Golden State is going to do on the defensive end and say, hey, if you want to run your 5 small depth lineup, go for it. But we're going to hurt you in the post a couple of possessions to try to steal a couple easy buckets away from you. So I give a pretty significant edge to Boston. It's going to be interesting to see if that's going to be enough to turn the series because I heard this great phrase about Al Horford where you have 82 game players and you have 16 game players. And right now we're in that 16 game season that is the NBA playoffs. And Horford, while he wasn't necessarily great in the regular season, has absolutely come alive in the playoffs. So I think he's going to be, the best post player, which is a really weird thing to say about, again, like a mid-30s guy who's past his prime. It's just kind of indicative of how the NBA has changed over the years, that this is going to be, no longer is it Shaq or Robinson or Ewing or Olajuwon. It's Al Horford.
Yeah. Well, and I'll say this, it is funny to think about, but obviously like there's the superstars, but you can make a real case for Al Horford. Obviously not the best player in this series, but possibly the most important because he's a guy that could expose Golden State. So if we have like all-star level Al Horford, Boston has a fighting chance. If Al Horford is the 82 game season Al Horford, they're toast. My guess is it's somewhere in the middle and Golden State wins a close series, but he's definitely a big key to watching the series.
Absolutely. So that kind of leads into we've done better big guys. Let's talk a little bit more about the bench. So in terms of some of the role players that we haven't talked as much about, guys that are going to have a pretty outsized impact on the series. These are the guys that traditionally, as far as just, basketball kind of common knowledge, perform better at home, which Golden State is going to be the home team by virtue of having the better regular season record. Who stands out as having a better bench? And I think we're going to have another one of those things where it's like completely different reasons as to why their benches are good.
Yeah, I think it's going to be the depth for me for the Warriors. Boston basically plays too deep on the bench. It is basically Grant Williams and Derek White. And those two guys have been very good for them off the bench. But you look at the Warriors bench depth, they can at times be 7 deep, Tom. You never know who they're going to bring off that bench. And it was very, very indicative. Oh my gosh, Nadal just hit a crazy shot, but very indicative in that Mavericks series. I know this is the game the Warriors lost, but game 4 of that series, they were down like 20 something and the bench got them to within 6-8 points. And even when the Mavs brought their starters in, it was the Warriors bench, the Kumingas, the Moody's of the world. Those guys were leading the Warriors. And if you look at just like, there's not a guy that stands out statistically on the bench necessarily, but any given day, it could be Bielitsa, it could be Moses Moody, could be Kuminga, could be Porter Jr. Reports are that Andre Iguodala should be back at some point in the finals. Gary Payton, who had that injury, Gary Payton the third, I think he is. I don't say junior, but I think he's the third. The glove
he's
son.
the second.
Is the second?
He's,
Gary
he's,
Payton the
yeah,
second.
he doesn't go by junior; he goes by the second.
He goes Gary Payton the second. So he is Gary Payton's son, of course, one of the NBA's all-time great defenders. And when he's played, he's been great on defense. He's been athletic on offense. So and keep this in mind. I mean, Jordan Poole has been coming off the bench, and he is basically like a sixth man of the year contender if he is coming off the bench. So I think the Warriors have more firepower. They've got more scoring, more athleticism, and simply more depth. So to me, this is actually, I know the big man is fairly easy in Boston's way, but I think this is an even bigger edge. I think this is probably the biggest, most clear-cut edge in this series. I think the Warriors bench is significantly better than Boston's bench.
Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly on that. It's going to be a matter of kind of like how important is that? As we know, playoff rotations shorten up considerably, and now that it is the NBA Finals, they're going to shorten up even more, perhaps, where you're going to trust your best guys to go and get you 40 minutes every single night. Sure, maybe grab a breather for the last minute and a half in a given quarter or in a given half, something along those lines. So we'll see how much that depth really matters. I'm actually stunned. I'm looking at the injury report right now for Golden State, and that Gary Payton II is trending toward being listed as a game time call for Thursday's game one. I thought, quite frankly, with that elbow injury, he was done. So this is kind of like a little bit of a calculus change, at least in my mind. If he's able to suit up and play even just a few minutes in a given game, because he's kind of he's Golden State's, less important or less significant a version of a Marcus Smart, where he can go out and he can just dog the opposing team's best offensive player. Jason Tatum's life gets a little bit more difficult if Gary Payton's playing now.
Yeah, absolutely. And Gary Payton can do it in spurts of like 10, 15 minutes where he's not asked to be the guy on the floor. Jason Tatum will be playing closer to 40 minutes, and you throw Gary Payton in there, 10, 15 minutes a game. Absolutely. That could be a huge difference maker. And I saw that same injury report, Tom, and that is why I factored that into my decision. Andre Iguodala, by the way, a guy that seemingly plays in the finals every year. By the way, he was in the finals in the bubble year against, with the Heat a couple years ago. I think last year was like the first time in a while he wasn't in a finals series. Former finals MVP. Like, he's got that valuable experience if he does play in the series, which he's also trending upwards. He can come in and hit a key shot, and he's a guy that can kind of provide that leadership off the bench. So I do think it matters. I know it's obviously the starters are way more important. I get what you're saying about the shortened rotations, but this Warriors team reminds me so much of their championship team in, I think, 2015, the year before they went 73-9. Then they went 73-9 and lost. Then they got Mr. Durant, but they were Steph, Clay, and Draymond, and then a bunch of really good bench players. Leandro Barbosa was out there. I liken Jordan Poole like an even better version of him. They had all these guys. Harrison Barnes was a solid role player. They just have so many good players. Reminds me a lot of that team back in the 05-ish season.
Absolutely. So we've talked about everybody kind of on the court as far as this series goes. But of course, there is something to be said for coaching as well. I know NBA is a players' league, but it's not insignificant. We've seen what Ime Udoka has done, kind of coordinating Boston's defense to be absolutely hellacious. We've seen Steve Kerr and his offensive system put in place that, kind of takes away from the ball-centric, dominant, ball-dominant lead scorer for a team, and making it more of a system, find the open guy, and really hammer the fact that we've got better shooters across the board than everyone else, so let's make that the priority. Also, somebody's got rings in this series and somebody doesn't, so we're probably going with, maybe this is even a more significant edge than bench even, but Steve Kerr, Ime Udoka, who are you going for in the series?
So Udoka does have some rings as an assistant. Keep that in mind. But obviously, he was an assistant to Mr. Popovich for a while, right?
Hmm.
So not the same thing though. I definitely think the bench edge is bigger. This is actually a pretty tough question for me because I think Udoka's been fantastic. I mean, you look at his first season to be this good right away. Earlier in the season, they didn't do as well. They had some injuries, a new coach, a new system. But the second half of the year, they've had the best record in the league. They're in the finals. Tatum is playing like a borderline MVP candidate. Brown is very underrated. They're playing the best defense in the league, arguably. And I think a lot of that credit has to go to him because I certainly respect Brad Stevens a lot. I think Brad Stevens was a great coach, and he's not as good as Udoka. So obviously, it is very tight, but I will go with Steve Kerr kind of for the same reasons that you hinted at. Kerr has 3 championships as the head coach for the Warriors. He's played in 5 titles with the Warriors, 5 championship games, 3-2 record there. He also won 5 rings as a player. I know he was a role player, but the dude just knows how to win. And I think I liken him a lot to Eric Spoelstra. I'm not saying it would be the exact same situation. I think Kerr, obviously being a three-point shooter himself, is the perfect fit with that Warriors offense, that free play that Curry and Clay like to play with. But I think that a lot of people say, Steve Kerr just has good players and he's not a great coach. And those people will say that because the Warriors struggled when Curry and Clay were hurt. But that's how this whole system was built. And I think him getting those guys to buy in with chemistry is very important. And I know Mark Jackson, another basketball mind that I respected, I know those guys were younger, but he didn't take these Warriors to the same heights that Steve Kerr did. I think he's a very underrated coach, and I have a lot of respect for him. I think these guys are both great coaches, but the finals experience, the fact that Steve Kerr has been here so many times, both as a player and as a coach, he's got to get some points for that in this current scenario. So I give a slight edge to Kerr, but I don't think it's major because if Udoka was afraid of, the situation, he'd never been in the playoffs as a head coach. He'd never been in the Eastern Conference Finals as a head coach. It didn't seem to matter. And I think Boston being 7-2 on the road in the playoffs, that has something to do with coaching as well. So give me Kerr, but I don't think it's an enormous gap by any means.
I'm going to go with Kerr, and this kind of falls into more of the intangible category a little bit. He's not going to have any nerves for coaching in the NBA Finals. I mean, he will because it's the NBA Finals, of course.
Sure.
But we saw a couple of different times throughout the playoffs, Boston's decision-making toward the end of games has either cost them victories or it has made what seemed like a certain victory a lot more interesting.
Game 7.
Citing Game 7 against the Miami Heat there. And part of that comes down, quite frankly, to coaching. And is your voice being heard by your players in terms of, hey, these are the decisions, or are you reminding them of, we're up this much, there's this much time left in the game, we want to hammer these shots and we want to avoid these ones. Marcus Smart taking, granted, open looks for 3, but he's not a great 3-point shooter. That shouldn't be the shot that you're aiming for toward the end of the game that helps facilitate long rebounds and runouts that leads to Miami being able to get back into the game. So I think it's going to be like little things like that. Steve Kerr probably is going to have just like the same regular nerves that anybody would have on this big of a stage, but he knows how to work with that and he knows how to, walk his players through that sort of thing. Boston does not have that luxury, really. I mean, Ime Udoka, of course, being an assistant coach, has some finals experience in a certain regard, but it's a lot different when you're in the big chair right at the end of that bench, So that's why I'm giving more of an edge to Kerr. I mean, the strategy is the strategy. The X's and O's. These guys have everything that they need under the sun on tape for these, for each of these teams in terms of game planning, who's doing what. I'm going to give Steve Kerr a little bit of the edge as far as being, a better in-game or a better game-to-game tactician in terms of finding out where to kind of poke and prod and find some of the seams against this Boston Celtics team, in part because, again, the system kind of better allows for some malleability. Whereas if you're going up against some malleability,
I'm guessing that's flexibility,
like flexibility, being able to
word of the day, yeah.
things. Finding the mismatch is going to be a lot easier for Golden State on offense than it is, say for Boston, because for Boston it's basically stop Tatum, stop Brown. I'm probably really oversimplifying what the Celtics like to do on offense, but when you have a couple of ball dominant players like that, you don't really have to worry about as much in terms of some of the ancillary pieces moving around in an offense. It's a little bit more clear cut, straightforward. Whereas when you have a find the shooter flow system like the Warriors have, you can have a lot more flexibility to kind of poke holes in what Boston's going to do on defense. So I'm giving an edge to Kerr as far as adjustments and just overall experience goes over Ime Udoka.
Yeah, 2 quick points just to piggyback off you and bring up one more point that we haven't hit on as far as coaching. I do agree with you as far as what you said. Boston, obviously they blew one of the games against Milwaukee that they shouldn't have, and they almost blew the Miami Heat game. And in all honesty, just real quickly, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but Jimmy Butler should have driven to the basket. He can say all he wants about taking the 3-point shot, but Butler is a mid-range shooter, a driver, a free throw shooter. He had Mr. Old Man, Al Horford on him. Take Horford to the hoop, get the tie. Maybe you get the dub with an and one play. So Jimmy Butler bailed out the Celtics, I would say, at the end of that game 7. But that's my take. But one more, Mike Brown is the Warriors' assistant. He is getting set to be the Sacramento Kings coach. I believe he was the coach when at least one of the years where the Cavs went to the finals with LeBron James. When he's filled in for Steve Kerr, he's been wildly successful over the years. Like I said, a guy that I think Mike Brown, I'm going to look this up, but I think he was coach of the year one of the years with the Cavaliers. So definitely got to give the overall coaching edge to the Warriors as well. As my internet is slow, I'm going to look this up right now just to make sure. But I think the Warriors, the other thing that, we got to think about them is they've been here in this situation. Like that same roster, that coach, he understands his players in that situation. Mike Brown, NBA Coach of the Year in 2009. And he was an assistant coach with the Spurs when they won the title in 2003, assistant coach for the Warriors in 2017 and 18. And he was the Cavs coach from 2005 to 2010. So he was the coach when LeBron single-handedly took the team to the finals. I think got swept against the Spurs, I believe. But nonetheless, definitely think got a great assistant coach out there for the Warriors as well. And Udoka, by the way, Tom, he was an assistant on the Spurs team that won the championship in 2014. So there you go.
Gotcha. So in terms of coaching, it looks like we're going Warriors on that one. So I think so far, just to have the tallies counted up, you've got edge to Golden State on perimeter. I've got that to Boston. We're both going Boston as far as perimeter in the.
Well, I thought you went Golden State perimeter. No, you went duos Golden State perimeter. Boston. Yep.
And then post play. That's both of us for the Celtics. Bench and coach looks like we're both going Warriors on that one. So kind of like the last X factor type category is intangible. Whether that means 9-0 at Chase for the Warriors. Whether that means Boston's record on the road in the postseason. 7-2. Fantastic on that. So does home court matter? Do any of the other kind of intangibles that we kind of think about matter? Or is it basically just we're going to have, potentially 7 really loud games and it doesn't really matter where they're being played?
I don't know that the home court matters necessarily, but if it does, it would be the slightest of edges to the Warriors. Like you mentioned, 9-0 at home, but Boston has proven they can win on the road at 7-2. But really the intangibles that do matter is the NBA Finals experience. 0 NBA Finals games played by Boston's entire roster. 123 NBA Finals games played by the Warriors. And you look at the most important players in their first championship, probably the three most important players over that whole run. Obviously, Iguodala won the Finals MVP, even though Curry got robbed, but that's another story for another day. But that was the core. It was Steph, Clay, and Draymond, and even when they brought Durant in, those guys were still very important. So it's not just playoff experience. I mean, it's the core players are on that team. So I think 123-0 NBA Finals games played. I think that has to matter at least a little bit. I know they put up the graphic of teams with the most playoff games versus teams with none. And it was like the Bulls against the 97 Jazz. The Bulls won that series. But it was the 91 Lakers against the Bulls. And the Bulls actually won the series when they had zero finals experience. Obviously, that was a pretty old Lakers squad. Magic and James Worthy were on the back end of their careers. Jordan and Pippen right on the prime. And I don't think Tatum and Brown are as good as Jordan and Pippen. So I think it is a little bit different here. So I think Golden State has the intangibles of having been in this situation. They understand. Also, one thing to think about, Tom, I saw this. This is the longest distance between flights of any finals since like when the same two teams met like in the 60s or something. I can't remember the exact year, but slightly longer trip than Boston and LA, which obviously was a pretty long trip. But I don't know. I'm not saying that's going to matter. Obviously, no back-to-backs here. But Golden State, I would say, probably more experience with those flights at this stage in the season as well. I never thought I'd be talking about miles and travel, but Golden State has to get the intangibles based on the experience. And I don't know that home court matters much, but if you were going to point to it mattering at all, certainly I'd argue that it does in Golden State's favor. The home team has won the vast majority of the NBA Finals. A lot of that is simply because you are the higher seed, but I got to go Warriors intangibles simply due to experience and the fact that they're playing so well together right now.
Absolutely. I really don't have much different to say than that. Basically, you hit on all the notes that I had. So I think that means that we can just kind of go right to who wins the NBA Finals and in how many games. And, who's going to be Finals MVP? Is this finally Steph's year?
Oh,
whether,
you bet it is.
See, like that's the thing where I'm going on this one, where it's like if Golden State wins, even if maybe Clay has a better series or Jordan Poole somehow has a better series, does Steph still get it? Because it's a little bit of a mea culpa for the Andre Iguodala.
Oh, I got that reference. Yeah. So I don't want to spend a ton of time on this Curry thing because I will be hitting on this exact topic during Locks of the Week and Statement of the Week. Ooh. So I feel pretty strongly as far as Curry's MVP chances in this series. And I think in the words of Remember the Titans, leave no doubt. Curry will leave no doubt as to who deserves the MVP. I think the Warriors are definitely going to win the finals. I feel pretty confident in saying that. I really do. I think they've got a much better, not much better, but a better overall team. I think the starting lineups are close. I think the stars are close. But Boston, I think, relies a lot on Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. I know Marcus Smart, Williams provide on the defensive floor, which has to matter. But Golden State also statistically one of the best defensive teams in the league. And guys like Draymond Green, Andrew Wiggins, they add a lot on that side of the game. And Klay Thompson, a pretty good defensive player as well. Gary Payton, you mentioned too. So I think the Warriors just have more good players. They've got obviously all that experience we talked about as an intangible. But I think Steph and Klay don't have to be lights out in every game. One of them can have an off game and they can still win the series. If Tatum or Brown, or worst of all, both have an off game, I just don't see how Boston can win. And as good as Jason Tatum has been these playoffs, he has had some off games. He's had some off games, and Boston hasn't been great in those games. The statistics also show that the Warriors have been much better in close games. So when we do have close games, I trust Golden State way more in those situations. And I think that Jordan Poole is way more electric than the third leading Boston scorer. Heck, I think Andrew Wiggins, who's Golden State's fourth leading scorer, he's better than Boston's third leading scorer. I think Golden State has more guys that can hurt you in more ways. They have more all-star level players. They have more depth. I think it's a wave of Warriors, and I think Golden State wins this in 6. I think it could go 7. I wouldn't be against 7, but I think it's 26 straight playoff series with the win for the Warriors on the road. That is the most ever. So I look for them to close out Game 6 in Boston. Golden State definitely going to take Game 1. I'll get into that in locks of the week, but they've started series hot. Boston has started cold. Maybe they can afford to do that against the Bucks. Maybe they can lose Game 1 against the Heat. But you can't mess around against the Warriors. So give me Golden State in 6 games.
I've got a tough one with this because we're at this point where a lot of the things that we've been talking about are really pointing toward the Warriors winning this series. And like, what's the one thing that we have had on this show so many times where all the signs point to a team, they kind of just end up winning it. So even though I'm kind of feeling a little bit, maybe it's Boston's vibe type of thing this year, I think I just have to go with Golden State on this one as well. I will say 7 games. I think it's going to go the distance. I could definitely see a situation where we're 2-2, where each team has picked up a win on the road heading into games 5, 6, and 7. And then they just kind of trade off home victories at that point. So I'm going to go with Warriors in 7, but it's going to definitely be a fun series. I hope it goes the full distance because I think that the playoffs in general, we've had some like blowout games in between, but for the most part, the series themselves have all been really, really compelling. And so it is my hope, my fingers are crossed, that we have an equally compelling series going forward for the finals as well, to just kind of wrap up what's been a really fun playoffs, quite frankly, on a really high note.
Yeah, real quickly, Tom, I want to say this. We are reversing the curse here. I know we've talked a lot about who's going to win what. I know we butchered it with Gonzaga and Baylor a couple, like last year. I know we butchered it with the Chiefs and Bucks. But guess what, Tom? The train is turning. We all picked the Rams in the Super Bowl because we had the logic reason it worked. And we both, I will say this, even though it's not who either of us had in the preseason, we both had the Warriors and Celtics in the last series. So we did pick the Eastern and Western Conference series right. I'm also in the green 2 weeks in a row with my sports betting. So the tide is turning. Don't worry about jinxes. Don't worry about the past. Things are looking good. Believe in your pick. Believe in Warriors Nation and believe in Rafa Nadal as he just gets a break point back. Djokovic serving for the 4th set. Rafa breaks him 5-4. 4th set ain't over. Let's get it, Nadal. I feel good about the Warriors for sure.
Absolutely. Well, the NBA Finals are not the only playoffs that are going on right now. We have NHL as well. I don't have bracket pulled up in front of me. I believe that
Oilers
it is
Avalanche.
Oilers
and the winner
Avalanche
plays Lightning Rangers.
Okay, perfect. I'll let you just kind of take it from here as far as that goes. I think I have my new team to win it all just on virtue of how they've been doing so far in the postseason, but quite frankly have not been watching nearly as much hockey as I ought to.
Yeah, I've actually caught a little bit more than I have in years past. I can't say that I've watched a ton because obviously the NBA playoffs take precedence for me. Obviously, you know this. I work a lot of weeknights, play a little rec volleyball as well. But I think for me, I'm gonna go with my gut on some of these. I'm gonna gut out one of the series and I'm gonna reason out the other. So I already know who you're gonna pick because I know you, Tom. You're picking the Avalanche because they've been the most dominant team in the playoffs. So I'm gonna pick the Oilers to win at the Avalanche. Connor McDavid, arguably the best player in hockey. One of the hockey games I did watch was the third period and overtime of their closeout against Calgary. He scored the winning goal in OT. I put money on it, paid out for me. So I'm going to roll with Connor McDavid, best player in hockey. As the Oilers, by the way, one of the storied franchises, 5 Stanley Cups, have not won any since 1990. I think they're due to, at the very least, make the Cup final. And then on the other side, this is where I'm going to go with reason. The classic pick them until they lose argument, because the Tampa Bay Lightning have won 2 straight Stanley Cups. And until they lose a Stanley Cup, I'm not going to pick them to lose. They are playing some great hockey. They were down 3-2 in their series against Toronto, came back to win game 6 and 7 against the Maple Leafs. Nikita Kucherov is a great player. He scores a lot of goals, gets a lot of assists. But how about Andrei Vasilevsky? He is something else. Vasilevsky is incredible. He got 49 saves to shut out the last game they played. In their last easy series win, their sweep, they allowed 3 goals in 4 games. So I think Tampa's got the playoff experience we just talked about with the Warriors. They've got the hot goalie. They've got the star player in Kucherov. It's Tampa versus Edmonton in the final. Tampa wins the whole thing. And I am no Barry Melrose, but that's what I'm going with.
Well, I'm going to go with, as you said, the Avalanche. I really like what they've done in the playoffs so far. They've had really one off game where they lost to the Blues 4-1. The other loss that they've had in the playoffs was a 5-4 shootout. It wasn't on a shootout, but it was just an incredibly high-scoring game where the Blues just happened to grab an extra goal to win that game. I think the Avalanche have been playing just about as well as a team can skate. And then, you know what, just for fun, I'm going to go with the Rangers on the other side. We'll just go completely contrarian on this one. I'm going to say resilience on this one. They were down 3-1 against the Penguins. They were down 3-2 against the Hurricanes, able to gut through and win in pretty convincing fashion. Down 3-1 to the Pittsburgh Penguins. They win 5-3, 5-3, 4-3. So Game 7 being the only, close game as far as being a 1-goal game. And then down 3-2 against the Hurricanes, they win 5-2 and 6-2. So this is a team that when their backs are up against a wall, they know how to perform underneath that pressure and advance. So I'll have Avalanche against Rangers, and I'll call Avalanche now that the Calgary Flames are sadly out of the postseason.
Awesome. Classic rust versus, what is that saying? Rust
versus rest.
Rest. Tampa,
which is actually going to be a thing in the NBA Finals too, by the way.
It is, and I think that's why I'm sticking with Tampa and Golden State, because those two teams have proven that they can win in those situations. They're multi-time champions, and they've both had situations where they've rested in the past, and it hasn't hurt them. So I am going with the Lightning getting the rest. The Rangers are going to be good, but I think it's been tough. They've played a bunch of 7-game series, a lot of energy there, expanded. Tampa Bay sweeping the Panthers. They're rested. They'll be fine. So that'll be fun for sure. Locks of the week, I think, is next, right, Tom?
Indeed, Locks of the week is next. We have a little bit reversal of fortunes, as I think it was a bit of a tough week for Drew and myself. Common, you had a pretty good week. So what do you have on the recap?
Yeah, like you said, reversal of fortunes, which is crazy because you guys have been so hot. I've been a little bit cold. So I got it pulled up here on my phone. Didn't copy and paste it into my notes, but really a brutal week for Drew. Drew's been amazing all season. 0-3 for Drew. He missed the Heat winning or plus 1.5 against the Celtics in Game 5. Celtics winning 93-80. Drew had, Drew also had NHL Avalanche Blues under 6.5. On May 25th, it was 5-4 Blues, 9 total goals. And then a little MLS over-under 2.5, Atlanta United and Columbus Crew. He was wrong, 2-1 Columbus winning. Tom, you had the Warriors to beat the Mavs in Game 4 on the money line. Mavs winning 119-109. You did get the White Sox minus 1.5 over the Red Sox. They won 3-1. And then you had Liverpool plus 110 to win the Champions League in regulation over Real Madrid. You were wrong. Real Madrid 1-0. And this is where I told you, Tom, I'm a Barcelona fan. I hate picking against or picking for Real Madrid, but those guys and their Champions League mojo is something else. They got outplayed against PSG, came from behind late to win by 1 goal in that 2-leg tie. They were down 2-0 total goals, 1-3-2, came back from behind with less than 10 minutes left against Chelsea, went to extra time, won by 1, came back from behind against Man City, 2 goals in the 90th and 91st minute. And I was like, I've seen this story again. It's Real Madrid in the Champions League. They can't, they won't lose in the Champions League. It was crazy because Liverpool absolutely dominated the game. I mean, Real Madrid did nothing, Tom. They had 2 shots on goal the whole game. Some statisticians had them as one in the whole game. And it went in. It went in. Liverpool, meanwhile, had 9 shots on goal, over 20 shots in the match. Thibaut Courtois made 9 saves and about 3 spectacular saves. If someone else was goalie, like the expected goal differential, Liverpool should have had about 2 to 3 goals in that game. He made some incredible saves. So I had Real Madrid winning the Champions League. I had him at any point. So I had him at plus 120 to lift the trophy, whether it be in regulation, whether it be in extra time, whether it be in penalty kicks. They did win in regulation 1-0. Vinicius Jr. with the tap-in. It's a goal that I would have scored as an ex-soccer player. Heck, you might have scored it. It was so easy for him. I did get Real Madrid. We went Oppo on that side. I feel like when we've gone Oppo, more often than not, you've been the winner. This time it was me, baby. I was due. We did go the same on that Warriors pick. So I missed the Warriors game. But I did have a 2-1 week because I did hit on Celtics Heat under 203.5 in game 5. This was a game, this is pretty rare. I'll say a pretty historic bet in that I feel like the vast majority of bets I make, I am sweating out till the end, win or lose. This one was 93-80. There was 173 points. I looked up in the first quarter, it was like 15-14 with a minute to go. And I'm like, I feel great about my under 203.5. So those are my locks recap. Let me get you Drew's picks real quickly, and then I'll let you get into your locks. Drew has, by the way, Drew has the Celtics winning the NBA Finals. We didn't get his pick in. He's got Celtics over Warriors in 6. He's got Avs minus 1.5 over the Oilers tonight. He's got Celtics plus 3.5 against the Warriors in game 1. And he's got a little soccer international friendly Brazil, South Korea under 2.5 goals. What you got, Mr. Castleman? Getting Drew's picks via the phone. He sent them in.
All right, so going with some player props, and I'll take a point total as well for the NBA Finals Game 1. Give me Al Horford over 10.5 points. No plus money Castleman this week. It's minus 120, right underneath our threshold. Horford's been averaging 11.9 points per game.
Okay.
And Golden State doesn't really have a great defensive post presence, so not sure why they're going to give a full point. I mean, there's a little bit of juice, but I'm going to go ahead and take it. Kevon Looney, I'm going to go under 9.5 rebounds for him. He has gone over 9.5 rebounds 4 times in the playoffs. 3 of those were in games against Dallas, a team that doesn't exactly have a great post presence. So under 9.5 rebounds, that's at minus 114. So not a ton of juice on that one. And then really quickly, so one thing to clear up for locks of the week, we're not going to do like series props, correct? So like if I wanted Steph Curry as finals MVP at plus 105, we would not do that for locks of the week because this is going to be a multi-week series, correct?
Yeah, let's not. I like to stay away from those if we can.
In that case, kind of in a similar enough vein, give me the over. I'm going to go for points in game 1. I think we're going to see Boston's defense get some turnovers to get some easy baskets. I also think we're going to see a lot of good ball movement on Golden State's side. So I think we'll get over 212 total points in game 1.
All right. What was your second pick? I know you had the Al Horford over on points. What was the second pick again?
Kevon Looney under 9.5 total rebounds.
Okay. So for the record, I agree probably with all three of your picks, which is a little dangerous. But I can say that it is possible you and I both go 3-0 because I'm not going Oppo on any of them. I am going Oppo Drew, though. So I like the Warriors minus 3.5 in game one against the Celtics. I'm going to keep it NBA themed here. As you and I like to do when there's big sporting events. I know how much we love to dig our pots, put them in there. Give me the Warriors minus 3.5 in game one. They've come out and won game one in all three playoff series so far. Two of them were dominant victories, easily covering 4 points. I mean, heck, they beat the Mavericks by 25 points in the last series in game one. Meanwhile, Boston has shown a propensity, to steal a word from you, to struggle in game one. They've lost game one in each of the last two series and by double digits in the last two. So they got beat pretty bad by the Bucks, got beat pretty bad by the Heat. And I actually think a lot of that has to be with, I know these are NBA guys, but they do get tired at some point. And I felt like it took a lot for them to win that last series against the Heat, just like it took a lot for them to win that series against the Bucks. They're more likely to come out with heavy legs in game one. And I think the Warriors are just so good in game one. And I think the rest helps Steph. It helps Clay. Those guys know how to come out in those situations. So Warriors should win by 4 or more in game one. No problem. And the next about 15 minutes of this program, Tom, there's going to be a very, very consistent theme. And that theme is Stephen Curry is here to ball in these NBA finals. Steph Curry should have been the NBA Finals MVP, that first ring they won when Andre Iguodala robbed him of the MVP. He guarded LeBron, yet LeBron was putting up near triple-double numbers much of that series. So I think Steph is going to get over 27.5. He's going to set the tone early in this series. He may not tell you, but he definitely wants that NBA Finals MVP on his resume. I know you mentioned, maybe Clay, maybe Jordan Poole does great, and Curry gets it because he's Curry, but I think he's going to leave no doubt here. I think he's going to put up a lot of shots. He's actively going to be hunting that MVP, and I think he's going to get it. It's just a feeling I had, Tom. I know I've been wrong on some things, right on some things, but one of my gut feelings was at the All-Star break, and you probably remember this, when he won that MVP of the All-Star game. I said this was his season. He was going to win the NBA Finals MVP. He got the All-Star game MVP. Now he's hunting that NBA Finals MVP. So I think a lot of those shots that weren't falling this year, obviously he shot pretty good because he's Steph Curry, but relative to where we've seen him, he shot lower than almost any of his seasons from three. I think those threes that he missed this season are going to fall in the finals. And also, I know it's a different team. I know Boston has stepped up its defense well. I know they have Marcus Smart, but for whatever reason, it seems like he plays great against Boston. Maybe that extra challenge, that big franchise, that great defense, I think that motivates him more. So I like over 27.5. Keep this in mind. March 16th, he only played 14 minutes against Boston. Take that game out. December 30th, he had 30 points against Boston. The last time that he met them before that, 47, and the game before that, 38. So I know we're going back a year. I know it's a different Boston team, but the last 3 full games he's played against Boston, 30, 47, and 38. Dude is ready to ball. Give me the over 27.5 at minus 115. And then I'm going to go a little hockey. How about some NHL?
Ooh.
I think our threshold is it minus 125, Tom? What do we agree on?
We've been right around 120, 125. I'm not going to.
All right. So you're not going to haunt me for 125. I'm going to take the Tampa Bay Lightning minus 125 at the Rangers in game one. Lightning have won 6 straight playoff games. They only allowed 3 goals in the whole 4-game sweep of the Panthers. They can win on the road, no problem, as they did twice against the Panthers. They won on the road against Toronto when they were down in that series. The Rangers coming off a tough 7-game series. Meanwhile, the Lightning, they've won 2 straight Stanley Cups. I think they just know how to win a series when they have some rest. I don't think they're going to have any rust. So Tampa wins game 1 on the road on the money line. I'm going favorites. I'm going Warriors -3.5. I'm going Steph Curry, 28 points. And I am going Tampa Bay in game 1. And Tom, we are in the middle of a 4th set tiebreak. I put $100 on this match. Pays out to $290. It is 3-0 Nadal in the 4th set tiebreak. 4 points away from $290 /$190 profit. Finish him, Rafa. Finish him. We were on this show last week when Nadal was plus 400 to win the French Open. The 2 guys rated ahead of him, Novak and this young guy, Carlos Alcaraz. And guess what? Carlos lost today. Novak about to lose today. I told you, you should have bet your mortgage on Rafa Nadal winning the French Open because it's going to happen.
Doesn't he still have to get through the semis and the finals, though?
He'll be fine. He'll be fine. I'm not worried about him. You still got to get through this tiebreak. It's 3-1 now with up 4-1. Here we go. 4-1. Djokovic error. 4-1. All right. We got this. This is some great tennis, baby. One more thing to say about the French Open, Tom. It is an absolute disgrace the way they put the seedings together. They went off tennis rankings. Some majors seed you based on how big the star is. Nadal, obviously number 5, I believe, in the rankings. He's the 5 seed in this tournament. And that is only because he's missed most of last year with injuries. So he hasn't played enough matches. But this dude has 13 French Open titles. He's 109-3 at the French Open. He should have been, at the very least, the 2, if not the 1 seed. It should be Djokovic and Nadal in the final. They've played for 4 hours and 6 minutes, and this is a quarterfinal. What a disgrace.
Robbed of an epic final matchup, unfortunately. Maybe, I don't know, is that going to be like your statement of the week or something like that? We'll touch on that.
No, after go your statement. Mine would be obvious.
Well, we've got trivia next.
Oh, we do have trivia. Okay.
And I do have some trivia for you this week. We'll see.
You might have the same question.
There is a chance we have the same question. Is it NBA related?
Yes, it is.
Is it NBA Finals related?
Yeah, it is.
Or I should say Finals MVP related?
No, not Finals MVP related.
Okay.
So I talked a lot. You start. 5-1 Nadal, by the way. 5-1 in the tiebreak. 2 points más. Dos más. Rafa.
Oh
I'm a huge Federer fan, by the way. Federer is my favorite athlete of all time. But I respect, or second favorite behind Leo Messi. Real quickly, Tom, by the way, Argentina and Italy play tomorrow in a matchup of the South American champion and the England or the European champion. So bet on Argentina to win tomorrow. I can find that online. I saw it at plus 150 in regulation.
Is that just like a friendly or something?
It's not. It's considered a FIFA trophy. So bet on Argentina tomorrow as a bonus lock of the week. I couldn't find it on many books, though. So a really hard one to find. So it's a big 3 days in a row of sports. Rafa, Novak, Messi in Argentina against Italy, and then the NBA Finals. But go ahead with your trivia.
Well, speaking of the NBA Finals, and we've talked about the MVP award for that series, Common, we'll just go with a basic numbers one first, because I think the names might be a little bit tough on this one. How many NBA Finals MVPs who are eligible for the Hall of Fame? So obviously Andre Iguodala, because he's still an active player. Tony Parker is not yet eligible because he doesn't have enough time distance between retiring.
I'm guessing. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, gotcha. So how many Finals MVPs who are eligible for the Hall of Fame are not in?
All right.
Do you know the number?
I'll go with 4 off the top of my head.
No, it's lower than that.
2.
It is 2. Now, bonus
Okay.
points if you can name the players. You can probably get one of them. The
Okay.
other one, I'm not even sure who he is, so I got to look him up real quick.
Okay. So first, let's start with the really hard one because
Okay.
I want to start hard and build my way. So since it's a very hard one, maybe give me the year and the team for the classic guy.
Okay, let's see. I got to figure out like which year. Bum, bum, bum. I don't
So
even know like which year he
Iguodala does
won.
not count, like you mentioned. There's 2.
Correct.
Iguodala currently does not count because I'm sure we can agree that Iguodala will not make the Hall of Fame.
Yeah. Like I could probably like give you the team. Okay, so I have the season in which he won the NBA Finals MVP. So I'll give you the era
Okay.
because it's basically an entire decade. He played from 1979
Okay.
through 1988. So that probably
Okay.
gives you the team on which he played.
Oh, Celtics or Lakers?
It is the Celtics.
Okay, Celtics.
Um,
It's not Kevin McHale.
it is not. No, position is small forward. He also played a couple seasons for Houston.
It's not Dennis Johnson because wasn't he a point guard? I'm not even sure if I'm saying the right name.
Correct. Yeah, no, he's not. That's not the man. I can give you a couple of his nicknames,
Sure, go
perhaps.
hit me. I can get this.
He's known as Cornbread. He is known as the Rubber Band Man. The other 2 nicknames are just shortened versions of his first and last name. So if I give them to you, I could give them to you. You might not even get it still.
Oh my God, hold on. This is getting nerve wracking here. 6-4. It was 6-1. Djokovic won 2 points on his serve. Now Nadal had a match point on the serve, didn't get it. So if he doesn't get this point, it would be 6-5, and then Novak is serving. So this is nerve wracking. So nicknames again, while I stress out about
Cornbread
this match.
and the Rubber Band Man.
Cornbread and the Rubber Band Man. I feel like I should know this. The only reason I feel like I should know this, Tom, is because I went back and watched a couple of those final series. I think I watched the 84 finals, Celtics and Lakers, but I'm guessing that was when Magic won MVP when he had that center performance. So it's not Magic, obviously, because he is one of the all-time greats. As soon as you say the name, I'm going to know it. Go ahead and give it to me because I'm blanking.
Okay, so the name that's really difficult to get is Cedric Maxwell.
Yep, Cedric Maxwell. I know exactly who that is.
I had to look him up because unfortunately doesn't have that long of a career and really only had like 3 seasons where he was like a really, really top end type of player, at least in the playoffs.
We won.
Rafa won.
Rafa wins.
There you go.
Show me the money, Jerry. Show me the money. Rafa Nadal, baby. All right. Whew.
Congrats to you on that one.
Clutch. How was he the underdog in his own tournament, the French Open, the King of Clay, plus 190? You kidding me?
Go talk to, is it the ATP that runs these things? Go talk to the ATP.
Well, the betting people set the odds. It's the American sports books. I wonder if the ones in France are different. They had to be, right? 4-set win.
I don't know.
Match took about 4 hours and 20 minutes. So anyways, Cedric Maxwell, keep going.
So that's the difficult one. The other one for which I'll give few if any clues.
Okay.
He did play when we were watching sports.
Okay.
I'll say he's played in this century.
Okay.
So that gives you a nice enough window.
2000, right?
Yeah.
2000 on.
Yeah. So can you name the other player who has won the NBA Finals MVP but is not in the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame?
Well, so he has to have been retired for a few years now.
Correct.
And not gotten in yet, and probably not going to get in, period, since that sounds like what you're saying. So it's not a Laker because it was Shaq and Kobe winning. Those 5, like 3 for Shaq, 5 for Kobe. And it's not an active player, obviously.
Correct.
Was not eligible. So I think Paul Pierce won it when the Celtics won the one season. No, it's not Kawhi Leonard. So, because he's an active player.
Mhm.
Because I'm thinking of the Spurs runs, Tony Parker. Ginobili has been retired for less than 5 years, right? It's not Manu Ginobili, is it?
It is not Manu Ginobili.
No. Okay, the Spurs. A lot of Spurs and Lakers titles during that turn.
Sure.
It's not the Raptors because that's the year Kawhi won. It's not the Warriors because it was Iguodala doesn't count and it was Durant winning. Obviously, it's not LeBron James.
Correct.
That goes without saying with the Heat. Oh, yes. All right. It's the Chauncey Billups.
It is, in fact, Chauncey Billups.
Yeah, Pistons.
He's a player who maybe might make it into the Hall of Fame at some point, but as of right now, he is eligible and simply not in yet. So the other players are kind of like on the fence.
50-50.
Yeah.
What do you think? I'll put you on the spot.
I mean, I would say no, but I'm a harsher grader than the NBA Hall of Fame is. I mean, if you're going to put Ben Wallace in the Hall of Fame, you should probably put in his teammate Chauncey Billups, who won the Finals MVP.
Yeah, well, for the record, obviously, I could 100% agree with everything you just said, Tom. I also am a harsher grader. I don't think that Ben Wallace belongs. We've had that debate on the show before.
That was a fun one.
That was a fun one. Chauncey Billups, though, 15 career points per game over his career. Let's see. He didn't get as much assists as I would have thought, 5.4. His best career season, he had 18.5 points and 8.6 assists. Yeah, I got to put him no. I got to say no on Chauncey Billups, but I can see him getting 19.5 points actually was his best year. He had 1 year total, but I lean no. I lean no, but I do think he is better than Ben Wallace. But that's just me. I also wouldn't put Richard Hamilton, and I wouldn't put Rasheed Wallace in there either, or Tayshaun Prince. But those guys were a great squad of a lot of very good players, not Hall of Fame players for me, especially not Ben Wallace.
I mean, it's interesting because if you look at, and I'm on basketballreference.com right now, as far as like similarity scores, if you scroll down a bit, here are the players that are most similar to Chauncey Billups for his career. And this might actually change your thoughts, as it might be changing mine. So it's Dwayne Wade is the most similar.
Yeah, way more points, though.
Followed by George Gervin, Steve Nash, Russell Westbrook, Gary Payton, Clyde Drexler, Stephen Curry, Walt Frazier, Ray Allen, and Damian Lillard. So as far as like the similarity scores go, that they have based on, they use a term called win shares. So I think that takes a lot of different things. That's not just straight up box score stats into effect. But as far as
any of those guys,
win shares, those are the guys that are most similar to Chauncey Billups.
He is worse than all of those guys, except for maybe Russell Westbrook. And he's still worse than him. So, yeah.
Even inadvertently, I find a way to open up the door for you to fire off a shot.
Westbrook, baby.
At one of the most entertaining point guards of all time.
Yeah, one of the most overrated, Mr. Field goal percentage turnover king. And I mean low field goal percentage.
Shooting like mid-40s or something like that. He's not terrible.
He's around like 42% for his career. Westbrook? And he doesn't make a high percentage of threes either. So it's like, I know Chauncey Billups doesn't have a great percentage, but he was actually at least making a decent amount of his three-pointers. Westbrook's not making squat except for bricks. He's building houses with those bricks, Russell Westbrook.
For his career, he's at 43.8% from the field. So almost.
Russell Westbrook?
Yes.
That can't be right.
Well, unless you want to throw hands with basketballreference.com.
I believe it. It feels like it's low. It's still not great. 43.8 is worse than most point guards in the NBA. Not great,
but led the league in scoring twice, led the league in assists
and then he shot like 42%. How many times has he led the league in turnovers? I'm sure quite a few.
Never actually.
I don't know about that. He's probably been top 2 or 3 for sure
Like turnovers per game,
every
he's
year.
never led the league. He might have led in total turnovers because, like, especially early in his career, he had a couple of seasons where he played every single game. So maybe on like volume, perhaps, but on a per game basis, it's not listed as.
Well, that's. Let me look it up. NBA turnover leaders
What's your trivia? We should
by
get into that.
year.
We're gonna turn into
By
a batch
year.
session on a Hall
I'm
of
doing
Fame point guard.
NBA turnover. What are you talking about, Tom?
Russell
This is
Westbrook?
total turnovers. 2000 to 21, he led it in turnovers. He led it in turnovers in 2017, 18, 2010,
Well, I was
11,
I
08,
was on the per
09.
game basis.
All right, turnovers per, and that's the whole point. Like if he led it in total turnovers, he would have been just barely behind in per game. So
Probably.
anyways, my trivia question involves a man that I'm sure you and I, probably one of the two guys it involves, did not expect to be talking so much about this guy when the season started. We would not, I mean, heck, with his past history, would have had no expectation to be talking about this man here on Tuesday, May 31st.
Okay.
So Al Horford, knock on wood, barring anything crazy, doesn't slip down the stairs or anything. He is getting set to play in his first NBA Finals on Thursday. He had the previous record, 141 playoff games with 0 finals games. That record, toast. Who is now the record holder for most playoff games played without a finals appearance? And I'll say one point, and this is a guy you might guess. So the number 2 guy now is Joe Johnson, but Joe Johnson, even though he actually played 1 game for the Celtics this year, which is wild. So Joe Johnson stands to win a ring if the Celtics win, which they won't. But ISO Joe Johnson could get himself a ring for participating in 1 game this season in the regular season. Joe Johnson now number 2 all time on this list. Who is number 1? I'll start with this. I'll say he's an active player, sort of.
Oh, active player, sort of.
Active player, but did not play much this season. Hardly at all. He actually did play. Here's one more clue. He did play in this postseason. He appeared in 1 playoff game this postseason.
Okay, so that eliminates Melo. All right. Gosh, I was going to say Dominique Wilkins, but because the Hawks never made the finals back then. Who's an old
with the team?
Who's an old guy who's just kind of hanging on to a bench somewhere? Dwight Howard made the finals with the Magic 1 year, correct? Okay, so it's not him.
4-time All-Star, this man is. 4-time All-Star, and I'll say this, he has never, ever been a top 10 player in the NBA. He's been a 4-time All-Star, but I'd argue all of those All-Star appearances, he was probably one of the bottom 5 All-Star players on those teams. I would liken his career at a similar trajectory to an Al Horford. Similar level type player.
Okay, so consistently solid, but never truly outstanding.
Correct.
Toward the end of his career, active player, sort of. And you said I was warm with the Carmelo Anthony?
I would say you're warmer with the Hawks.
Warmer with the Hawks.
Very similar career trajectory to Al Horford. Very similar in that they may have played together at one point.
So would that be Josh Smith?
Not Josh Smith.
Kyle Korver?
Not Kyle Korver.
Who else was on those teams for like a long time?
He actually didn't. So he did play on the Hawks. He didn't play on the Hawks for a long time. He played, let's see,
Oh,
one,
okay.
two, three, 4 seasons with the Hawks.
Okay, so not Jeff Teague.
I believe he would have made the playoffs. I mean, the team he played with before the Hawks was another classic team that would make the playoffs and do nothing in the playoffs, just like the team that he played for. Quite honestly, every team he's played for in his career, Tom, is a team that consistently makes the playoffs but does not make the finals. He has played in 130 playoff games. And he has actually ended up playing, let's see, from 06, every year, 06, 07, 07, 08, 08, 09, 29, 10, 2011, 12, 2013, 14, 2014, 15, 2015, 16, 2016, 17, 2018, 19, 2019, 20, 2020, 21, and then one game in 21, 22. So he's been pretty much in the playoffs almost every season since 2006. Crazy. He was probably Atlanta's leading scorer in the 2016-17 playoffs. Maybe. Crazy.
It's not DeMarre Carroll then, is it?
Not DeMarre Carroll, former Mizzou Tiger.
Yeah. Because he was never really an all-star player, though.
Played with a current league MVP.
So he's on Denver?
He was on Denver. After Atlanta, he went to Denver. He played on Denver, not this season, the previous seasons. He was actually on that Denver team that played the Lakers in the bubble Western Conference Finals. And he was actually, I don't want to say he was, well, I don't know. I'll say this, he was a contributor. He played exactly 24 minutes per game. He did start every playoff game for the Nuggets that year.
Okay, so that was Michael
the bubble
Porter,
was 2019-2020, right?
Jamal Crawford?
Not Jamal Crawford.
Oof.
That's a great guess.
Oof, I felt like I had it on that one.
Jamal Crawford, did he play for the Nuggets? He played for the Hawks. I don't think he played
for the Nuggets. He's played for like everybody. Jamal Crawford's played for just about every team in the association.
All right, so I'll give you every team he's played for, this guy.
Okay.
Utah is where he started. Then he skedaddled to Atlanta, then Denver. And I will venture to even give you his active team because he's barely played for this team.
Yeah, that's where I'm struggling.
So he actually played for 2 teams this year.
Okay.
Started this year on the Nets and then transitioned to the Sixers. So, but he only played 1 playoff game with the Sixers this year. So Utah, Atlanta, Denver, Brooklyn, and Philly. Classic teams that always make the playoffs, but never win in the playoffs as far as going deep.
Okay, so that's telling me I need to go back to that Ben Simmons, James Harden trade.
Yes, you're getting warm.
Oh, and I'm trying to remember who were the players involved because I know it was Simmons and Seth Curry.
It's not Seth, obviously.
Going from Philly to Brooklyn. And it was Harden and it was like some big man.
You're getting warm. He's a big man, but I would say this.
Paul Millsap.
Paul Millsap. There you go.
Wow. I completely forgot that he was like pretty good player all around. Yeah.
4-time All-Star, 2014 to 2017. Made the All-Star team every year. That was with the Hawks. His best season's coming with the Hawks. Before that, he played with the Utah Jazz, who are a staple in the playoffs. And then made several deep playoff runs with the Nuggets the last few years. So,
wow, that's a good one.
I would never have guessed that. I just happened to see it like on the internet.
Yeah.
Because I think that you had a lot of good guesses. Actually, Joe Johnson, I might have guessed. Jamal Crawford, I might have guessed. Carmelo, definitely. You would think Carmelo, and he's got to be up there. I got to pull up the top games. But, it was the one, the only Paul Millsap. Very underrated career. So
That's a good trivia question.
it is a good one.
We've got statements and salutes coming up. So, do you want to start with your statement of the week, or I can get into mine?
Now you can get into your mind. I'll salute Rafa Nadal for winning me money, but you get into yours first. I need a breather. I'm excited for my statement.
So, for my statement of the week, it's kind of like a statement, partial salute, maybe, as Aaron Donald of the Los Angeles Rams is at a little bit of a crossroad in his career where he's saying that, you know, ever since he started playing football in the NFL, he was thinking about 8 seasons and then he would be done. And this is kind of continuing a trend that we're seeing a little bit more, where players aren't necessarily hanging on for as long as they can and actually kind of choosing the moment at which to walk away. Aaron Donald saying that winning the Super Bowl last year didn't impact his decision to consider retirement. It's actually the other way around. Winning the Super Bowl, he said, has kind of gotten him addicted, and that he wants to win another one. So the way that things are kind of currently sitting is that he still has a year or two left on his deal with the Rams. However, there's no guaranteed money left on that deal. So if he were to get injured or something like that, they'd be able to cut him with little to no
I don't think they're cutting him unless it's like
well, like I'm saying, like if he gets
injury.
injured though, like
Sure.
if he decides like, hey, I'm going to be done, no real like cap ramifications there or anything like that. So basically, it's something where Aaron Donald is saying if they're able to get a new contract done for him, he's going to be back and playing this season. But he's also not going to be upset. He's not going to be mad if that's not the case, and he's completely at peace with walking away from the game right now. And so my statement is, I think this is actually kind of fantastic to see. I mean, we've seen sports evolve over time where it used to be, even stars of the games, in say the 50s, 60s, 70s, sports weren't big revenue makers. So while, yes, you had your contract, yes, you played for, say, the Yankees in the summertime, a lot of players on the Yankees are selling cars or working in different jobs in the off season,
Sure.
quite frankly, because there wasn't enough money going around. We're at a point where athletes are making generational wealth within just one or two contracts. And it's just kind of see, a different view of how the sport is looked at. We've seen it with Andrew Luck turning down a lot of money. Turning down a lot of money simply because
Calvin
his
Johnson.
quality of life sucked. He was like, I'm injured all the time. My kidneys
Sure.
were punctured. I don't want to live like this. I don't want to be like immobile by the time I'm 40 something. Aaron Donald hasn't specifically cited injury or anything like that, but simply being at peace with the decision that, first off, he's accomplished basically everything you can accomplish as a player in the NFL, and to be okay with walking away as opposed to, and not saying this is the wrong thing, there are athletes who stick around and hang on for as long as they can, even if it means that they are the 53rd or 26th or 12th man on whatever roster in whatever sport they're playing. They'll hang on for as long as they can. It's kind of refreshing to see players who, at the peak of their abilities, are saying, you know what? I've done everything I want to in this field, in this space. I'm going to go find something else to do in my life. It's a nice break from the whole mentality that football coaches kind of put onto, the overall notion that we carry of sports of like you have to be all in or all out as far as football goes. It's nice to see somebody having a different perspective on this sort of thing. So a salute and a statement of the week to Aaron Donald on that one. Hopefully we get to see him play because it's a lot of fun to watch him, but also, going to be really happy for him if he decides, hey, it's best for me to hang up the cleats and move on to the next chapter in my life.
Do you know what's left on his contract? If maybe you can look it up.
Don't have the exact particulars. I can go ahead and look that up now, though.
Yeah, look it up while I comment on this before I get into my statement, because I think Aaron Donald is interesting, and maybe correct me if I'm wrong, Tom, but as far as I believe, he hasn't had any major injuries and does not have any major current injuries. That's not to say that obviously he can get one at any point, and obviously the hits that he's taken over his career, no one is fully healthy. But as far as him, I don't think he's had any major injuries. Obviously, he is at risk for concussion, as any player is, but possibly, I don't know. And I'm not going to get into what position players are most at risk, but it appears that he has been healthy. It's interesting with him is he's considered by some already as a top 5 defensive player of all time. He's won 3 defensive player of the year awards, which is, I believe, tied for the most ever. Lawrence Taylor has done that as well. Taylor is considered by many, including myself, as the greatest defensive player of all time. Aaron Donald now, with all those all-pro seasons, the numbers he's put up, and now the Super Bowl that he's won, he is an elite company, and I'm not saying it's gonna happen. He's got to put up insane numbers to do it, but in theory, he has the potential to go down as the greatest defensive player of all time. I think if he continues, he probably ends up as the second greatest ever. I think Lawrence Taylor is a little bit too much to push past, but that is the interesting thing with him as far as if he wants to chase legacy. But, if he's fine with being a top 5 or 10 player, he's already there.
Absolutely. And that's kind of the interesting thing where this sort of decision making is going to kind of change how we have to have some of these conversations where it's not necessarily going to be as the best of all time, somebody who's done it forever. I mean, for example, Barry Sanders is a great example.
Best running back of all time.
And he didn't play all that many years in the NFL, for example. I have Aaron Donald's contract pulled up right now. As of this season, for this year, he has guaranteed money with signing bonus, roster bonuses, etc. He has 2 more years. He's signed through the 2023 and 2024 season. But again, no guaranteed money. So if he were to suffer some sort of major injury, the Rams could basically cut him without having to pay him any more cash. So that's part of the.
But this year he has guaranteed.
This year, yeah.
So he'll play this year, right?
I believe.
Is that what I'm hearing?
I think so. I'm going to have to go back to the article and reread it because I wasn't sure if he was saying this year was going to be his last one or if he might consider. I think it would be after the season because for him to bail on the Rams at this point would be
giving up a lot of dinero.
Well, giving up a lot of money, but also it's a little close to the season and the team's already made some plans around him.
Sure.
So I'm going to skim through this article again just to make sure I have it right.
I know entering the Super Bowl, there was a rumor that he would retire after the Super Bowl. That was a legitimate story.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I say this, Tom, as far as that, you do what you're comfortable with. I think it is great for athletes to be able to do what they're comfortable with. Aaron Donald, I'm sure, has earned enough money to do it. I'm also sure he can get a job in football, whether that be as an assistant coach, as a TV sportscaster, whatever it may be, assuming he spent his money wisely, which, you never know. Lawrence Taylor is a guy who hasn't spent his money wisely. He's not worth a lot. That's the reason why he's signed so many autographs. I work for a sports memorabilia company hosting online sports podcasts. We have Lawrence Taylor in our break room constantly, and it devalues his signature because of how often he's signed, even though he is the greatest defensive player ever. So he's using that as a revenue of income because he needs it, because he's got all these legal problems, all these extra women he's paying money to, all these places he lost his money. But I'm assuming, hopefully, Aaron Donald has managed the money more wisely. And whatever he decides, if he goes, good luck to you, Aaron. If you want to chase being the best defensive player, definitely looking forward to watching you play for sure.
Yeah, the article doesn't specify if he's saying it's this season or next season. I'm kind of reading into it that it's going to be if he doesn't have a new contract, he'll just retire this off season.
Sure.
And not play in 2022, 2023. Basically, his sentiment is, I was blessed to play this game to make the money I make. The accomplishment I made in 8 years is I'm complete. If I win another one, great. If not, I'm at peace. Sure. And that he doesn't need football to be fine. So not specified on when he might be pulling the plug as far as, any sort of contract talks with the Rams. But regardless, a different kind of healthy view on things. What's your statement of the week?
Absolutely. So my statement of the week is kind of something I've talked about throughout this show. I've tried not to go too much into it just because I don't want to be too repetitive. I don't want to beat a dead horse too much, but I think you are going to get the feeling that I'm doing it at least a little bit. And that is, Tom, that Stephen Curry will win NBA Finals MVP, but that's a very simple. I think it's plus 105. You said the odds are. I'm going to go as far as say this, Tom. Stephen Curry will have one of the 5 greatest NBA Finals performances of all time. Up there with Magic, up there with MJ, up there with Giannis from last year. He's going to put up insane numbers. This is going to be the Steph Curry show in these NBA finals. 32 finals threes, the record which he owns, by the way. That's flying off the shelves. 32 threes, no problem. He'll have a 50-point game in these finals. I will go on the record and say that. If not 50, just under, but definitely over 40 at some point in this series. I think that it's just a gut feeling I had at the All-Star break. I told you, Warriors win this whole thing. Curry wins the finals MVP that he's missing. I think a lot of shots are going to fall in this series. He's got great track record against Boston. Recently dropped 47 points against them. I believe last year it was. I think he's going to leave no doubt as to who the MVP is. We know Iguodala robbed Steph of an MVP. Just an absolutely tragic MVP decision. Steph averaged way more points in that series. Iguodala guarded LeBron, but you know what? Couldn't stop him as much as people thought. Actually, you look at the 2018 finals, Steph averaged 27.5 points per game, Durant 28.8. And there was one game where Steph was abysmal, one game where Durant was great in that series. You take out one game, you can say that he was the MVP for most of the final series in 2018 as well. So he should have at least one, if not two already. This time, he's not leaving anything to chance. He's going to be aggressive. And Stephen Curry, much like Leo Messi, his Argentina teammates love him so much, you can genuinely tell how much the Warriors love playing with each other. And maybe this is something I should have brought up during intangibles, but the team chemistry they have, they go crazy on the bench when, Steph hits the threes. They go crazy for Clay. They go crazy for Jordan Poole. You better believe his teammates are going to want him to get that finals MVP. Mm-hmm. They're going to be fine with him putting up some garbage points in the game that they're up 15-20. He's going to be the guy getting the ball at the end of the game. And I think he's going to hunt that MVP. He's going to put up a little bit more shots than maybe he would otherwise. So keep this in mind. Nothing is guaranteed in the NBA. We had the Warriors making, 5 straight finals, winning 3 of them. Durant leaves, but even without Durant, if Clay, Steph, and Draymond are healthy, Warriors are a finals contender every year. They missed the playoffs the last 2 years. Steph knows that nothing is guaranteed. He's going to hunt it here. And think about this. This team should win more championships, but Steph has already shown signs of being human this year. He's only going to get older and older. They might be in the finals in 3-4 years where we have a situation where Steph, Clay, and Jordan Poole are each at about 20 a game, where Curry maybe isn't the hands-down number one scoring option that he is right now. So I think he knows that his window of being an MVP player is closing. He can shoot. Shooters will shoot. Ray Allen played in the NBA for the longest time. Steph Curry can be a very good player into his 40s, but his window to be an MVP player is probably 2 to 3 years. He does not know if he'll get here again. I think he hunts the MVP. I think his teammates do everything they can to get it for him. I think it results in tons of shots, tons of threes going down, and an iconic NBA Finals performance from the MVP, Steph Curry, baby.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see how that happens. Marcus Smart might have something to say about that.
He's got nothing. Great offense beats great defense. Marcus Smart's going to get crossed up, 3 in your face. Eat it, Marcus. Steph Curry, baby.
We'll see. It's going to be fun to watch. Absolutely.
Yeah, I love it. So I think that's about it for today. Anything else you want to add, Tom?
No, that touches all the bases.
Oh, I'm fired up, man. It's a good sports week. Going to watch some soccer tomorrow, some NBA Finals on Thursday.
Got that bet clearing.
Bet
plus money coming in.
Rafa Nadal. Oh, it's just a good day. It's a plus 400 my butt to win the French Open as of a few weeks ago. Are you kidding me? King of Clay, man. King of Clay. Put some respect on his name. All right, Tom. That's going to do it for the show. We'll talk plenty of NBA finals next week. I believe we'll be 2 games in by our next show. I think it's Thursday,
Mhm.
Sunday, and
And
I
then
think
probably
Wednesday.
Tuesday. Oh,
I
is it
think
Wednesday?
Wednesday is game 3. So I
Gotcha.
think we'll have the first 2 games to go over. So we'll kind of talk about the switch from
Mhm.
San Francisco to Boston. So we'll have a lot to talk about. Definitely looking forward to a fun show that week. And just always a pleasure, man. Always a pleasure to
Absolutely.
do the shows with you. I definitely got fired up today, which is always a good thing. Always a good thing. Sports is life, man. Sports is fun.
Mhm.
It elicits the most exciting emotions and yet the most heartbreaking, whether that is your team's winning or losing, whether that's sports betting, whatever it may be. I've definitely been on the wrong end of both this year, but definitely on the right end today. I'll say that much for sure. So go Warriors, baby. Go Warriors. All right, Tom. I will see
Have a
you
good week,
next week.
everyone.
Yes, absolutely.